Welcome to Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here is the podcast host, James Delingpole.
Welcome to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole. And you are going to be so excited. You really are, actually. She's back. The woman is back. Her name, she's kind of a international sex symbol, I think.
Give or take.
If you listen to Twitter anyway. Yeah, Julia. Julia, there's a clue. Hartley Brewer. Talk radio host. The most... What are you? The most incisive, yada yada broadcaster in Britain. You're great.
I think that's a fair description.
You take no
it's
prisoners.
on my business cards, yes.
You take no prisoners.
I'm very excited. I've just been nominated for a Radio Academy Award. I'm up against Today programme, Alan Brazil's Talk Sport breakfast show, Radio 5, but also BBC Radio Berkshire. I think we all know who's going to win, don't we?
Well, you might.
I think we all know it's BBC Radio Berkshire.
Sorry.
I'm very excited. I've never even been nominated for an award. I mean, not even at school. Not even at primary school did I ever get an award.
These
are effectively the Oscars of the radio world. Only sort of no red carpet, no glam dresses, and no Oscars.
Who fnuds it?
I don't know. Radio Academy.
Because I'm thinking on the
I'd never heard of them.
on the negative side, you're quite right wing, although
I'm not. You see, we have this battle over.
No. There's no. Well, it's not. But no. It's a term of convenience.
I'm a Brexiteer. I'm not winning any awards.
You're not a lefty.
Yeah.
But you're a woman. You can play the chromosome card.
Yeah. I'm a victim.
Yeah. You are. I've always thought.
Although I am white and middle class.
You are quite fragile.
Yeah, said the guy who couldn't actually use a map to find my house.
It's not my job to use sat-navs.
Was it multitasking, walking and looking at a map?
Sat-navs are designed for geeks and techies.
And girls.
And I'm not. Yeah, well,
and girls.
Yeah, actually, my daughter's very good at sat-nav.
Yes, I just don't think you didn't quite realise that the map that was taking you down the one-way system didn't apply to people walking on the pavement.
I don't know how to change...
Because I like that you obey laws that closely. It's really good.
I don't know how to change it onto car thing. I mean, off the car and onto pedestrian or whatever. Anyway, look, I want to talk to you about almost the most gobsmackingly weird, appalling bit of radio I think I've ever heard in my life, which was when
Thanks.
Yeah, but in a good way for you, which is when you gave a very thorough grilling to a very, very scary representative of the New World Order. I mean, he's a complete nobody, a guy called Alan Billings.
Dr. Alan Billings.
Probably a doctorate in what kind of...
I'm going to guess psychology.
Yeah, exactly, and caringness. Ex-vicar, I think, as well.
Well, there you are then.
And he was in charge of the South Yorkshire Police Authority, is that right?
He's a police and crime commissioner. So, we had this big thing about we're all going to vote to elect police and crime commissioners because it was about local people having their say. So that instead of the police going off and doing those home office priorities and the politicians having a say from the Westminster bubble, local people would have a representative elected to represent their views and their desires and their wants. So they've elected this guy, probably 20% of people bothered to turn out to vote.
Yeah.
And Dr. Alan Billings is
Actually,
their representative.
It was 12%. I looked it up. And isn't that, just before we go on to this thing, isn't that the problem with all the... I remember people like Dan Hannon. I love Dan Hannon, but singing about how localism, the great thing about localism, you can vote them out. And if your local police authority doesn't perform, get rid of the commissioner and he will be responsive to you. Rubbish. It's in a Labour area. They would vote for a blind monkey if it was wearing a red rosette.
A blind monkey might have come up with a better policy than this one.
It certainly would. No, definitely. But so they are stuck with really shit policing because of this.
Yeah.
Of
And
system.
most people have never heard of their police and crime commissioners either. So, But anyway, this guy came on air. I have to say, I had a little small hope. The story that we wanted to talk about was the idea of hate non-crimes. And this is after South Yorkshire sent out a tweet on their official Twitter feed asking people to report not just hate crimes, but to report non-hate crimes. And we're all sort of what?
They were hate non-crimes, weren't they?
Oh, sorry, hate non-crimes.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies, hate non-crimes.
Yeah.
And I said, well, look, get the local PC on because VCC on. He'll think this is madness.
Yeah, he'll defend.
And then he came on and defended it to the hilt. It was the most extraordinary thing. Their idea is that there are things that happen to people they don't like, unpleasant exchanges in the street, dirty looks even, unfriendliness, which is, while not a crime, only just though under the CPS definition of hate crime, the police still want to know about, because it will give them information that might be useful if there's a future crime, presumably from this person who has committed this crime that's not a crime involving hate. And extraordinarily, this all came about after a woman wearing a hijab, a 6-foot Muslim woman, on the few days beforehand, had been seen running through, I think, Barnsley in South Yorkshire, carrying a 1-foot-long knife, shouting, "Kill, kill, kill," terrifying the living daylights out of everybody. The woman was arrested. She actually did stab somebody, and the case is going to court. Now, because there were some nasty tweets sent out as a result of this, which were deemed to be racist and Islamophobic and not nice, it was thought necessary for South Yorkshire Police to put out this tweet. And the defence that this guy, Alan Billings, had was, some people would have been very upset by those tweets. And I said, don't you think that perhaps it might have been the people standing in the street while a woman ran through with a knife shouting, "Kill, kill, kill," that might have been more upset? And there was a long pause. And he said, I think they'd both be upset. As if reading a tweet, not aimed at you in particular, but just reading a tweet that you don't like, would upset you as much as being in the street with someone trying to kill people. We are in genuine mad territory where something written down by someone you'll never meet ever in the ether can be considered as worrying and as hateful as someone actually going around stabbing people in the street.
Yeah, that was what I found chilling, to use a tabloid word, but I think it's apt in this case, because like you, I thought he was going to back down. I thought he said, well, maybe it was a bit
I thought he'd be the voice of reason on this,
but he believed this stuff. He really
fully signed up.
And there are people like, I'm sure he's done a common purpose course.
Yeah,
they all learn this.
You don't get up in these ranks,
but he was so fluent in sort of sociologist speak and
I think he dealt with me more in sorrow than in anger.
Yes,
because clearly I'm not woke enough. And it wasn't when I said things like, "Don't you think that people would be more hurt by, more worried about someone running through a street carrying a knife, shouting 'Kill, kill, kill,' than reading a tweet?" I think his view of me was sort of, if only she understood properly.
Yeah,
she clearly just. Clearly I'll be first being sent to the re-education camp, when these people are properly in charge. But I find this genuinely worrying, that this confusion between genuine crimes and perceived non-crime hate events. I think is really worrying, and I think we are in very, very sinister territory. We're in full-on Big Brother thought police territory, where thinking it, saying it, bad as doing it. In fact, it's probably worse.
It's the same, by the way, in Germany. I just spent 2 weeks in Frankfurt, and I was talking to a local politician, and he was saying, I was saying, the police, I mean, where are they on all this stuff that's going on? And he said, well, the ordinary beat officers, or whatever you want to call them, they're fine, they're on site, but the senior police have all bought into this political correctness stuff. That it
was a really good idea to bring in 1 million people who didn't speak the language.
It's 3 million.
Were unskilled. It's 3 million?
Yeah, the figure they quote is 1 million.
1 million is
and
registered.
Yeah, exactly. But they reckon it's 3 million.
Because there's no doubt at all. The spate of crime, particularly violent crime, massive unemployment benefit payouts.
Sort of men sort of going to the pool changing rooms and masturbating in front of this kind
lovely.
It's lovely, yeah.
But people like you and me who were pointing out that this was insanity, it doesn't work doesn't work anywhere.
Yeah.
And the idea of bringing people in from a Middle Eastern culture, it's not an anti-Islam thing. It's just simply a cultural difference thing. Bringing people in en masse to a Western country without any plans at all about how you're going to assimilate people into German culture or what's happened in Swedish culture, is genuinely insane. That people would say, "Oh, you terrible, terrible racists, you xenophobes, you unfeeling, horrible people." Well, thank God for I know you're not a fan of David Cameron, but thank God for David Cameron saying, "Nope, we'll just take a couple of thousand, thanks ever so."
certainly, yeah, that one of his least unfine hours, least worst moments. Yeah, exactly.
But and he had the British public behind him straight away. The British public on all of these issues is insanely sane. They see it, they live it, they experience it, because the people making the decisions don't ever live with the consequences. I'll tell you why. Because a bunch of immigrants who've arrived from the third world, funnily enough, don't pitch up to live in beautiful white stucco houses in Islington, or the lovely, beautiful brick houses of Hampstead or of Mayfair, Westminster. They don't live there. They end up on the housing estates in the inner city areas, all these suburbs, and it's the other people. It's the ordinary Brits who vote against this stuff who end up living with the consequences, which is why they vote against this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, whatever else people say against us, Julia, and they do.
We're right.
And they do. Well, A, we're right, but B, the people are on our side. Ordinary people, the non-Oxbridge people, the ordinary working people.
Well, the amount of times when I tweet out about things, or on my talk radio show, or I did question time last week, or reactions to, I wrote 3 national newspaper columns last week. The reaction I get from people saying, "Oh, thank God someone's saying it," and just, I'm not UKIP, I'm not BNP, I'm not a lunatic. I've had boyfriends who are black. I have friends who are Muslim. I couldn't care. I don't care about the colour of your skin. I don't care what your religion is. I've got no interest whatsoever in that. Are you a nice person? I judge people on what they say and what they do, and that's all I'm interested in. But the reality is that the people who are saying the stuff that the vast majority of people are thinking, we are constantly called nasty people, racist, far right. I've been called far right. I grew up the child of an NHS GP. I voted Lib Dem more than I voted anything else. And suddenly you're far right for speaking what the average person realises is completely obvious common sense.
Yeah. That inflation, that language inflation, whereby we used to be... I was never called far right until the last, I'd say, 5 years.
No, it's all post-Brexit.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
The abuse... I was only on Twitter from 2012 onwards, but the abuse I get now... If I look up who's sending me abuse, vile woman, ghastly woman, horrible creature, those sort of things, that is pretty much to a T. That'll be from either people with FBPE hashtag, which is a follow back pro-European, massive Corbyn, or massive pro-Europeans, or it's from Corbynistas, or usually they're both. Invariably, they have a hashtag citizen of nowhere or citizen of Europe.
Yes,
they've got the EU flag, they've got the hashtag FPPE and Save Our NHS. Those 3 things combined, guaranteed the C word will be used against me.
They're so toxic. And I'll tell you something else, and this is a scoop, actually, a scoopette for this show and for our conversation and everything. I was going to tweet it out, and I've been feeling a bit awkward about it, but because I don't want to sort of...
If you're feeling awkward about it, is it something you should say?
Yeah, no. It's I just...
I've met you, James.
I don't want to start a war here, but I've noticed that whenever I get a really, really nasty tweet from somebody, yes, they've got the FBPE hashtag, but they've also got followed by James Chapman.
Yeah.
All the worst people.
James Chapman, of course, he used to be political editor of the Daily Mail, and then he went to work for, he was working for George Osborne.
Yeah.
And then when Osborne got ousted when Theresa May went in, he went to work for David Davis, which I think a lot of us thought was, when he was Brexit Secretary, was a bit of a strange move, given that he was working for the most anti-Brexit person to move for the most pro-Brexit person. And funnily enough, it didn't work out.
No, because he is very much a Ramona.
Very much a Ramona, and has had, by all accounts, something of a... I was certainly online. It appeared to be a breakdown of some sort over Brexit.
I think that's right. Well, that was rather why I didn't want to. I don't want to pick on him, but I just think it's very, very odd that whenever I get a really nasty tweet from somebody, and I look, because you're quite curious, aren't you, about who is this person?
Often I want to see whether they are actually a real person, or are they a bot? I'm completely convinced, actually, that a lot of this is a creation from some of the anti-Brexit organisations, which are actually they're spurring people on. But I think some of these are bots. Some of them have so many hashtags, and if you look at everything they tweeted, everything is about the EU, every single thing, and you just think, well, no normal person only tweets about one thing. Occasionally, they would have tweeted about, I don't know, the Bodyguard or something, or lunch they've had.
Have you looked at AC Grayling's Twitter feed?
AC Grayling's Twitter feed is so hilarious.
Every single tweet is about... I mean, it has unhinged them. They have become monomaniacs.
I find AC Wailing much more fun.
AC
Racy Whaling, the spoof account, Racy Whaling. What I love about that is it's actually not as mad as the account it's spoofing.
Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, he is beyond satire, but so is Joe Morm QC, and
get me started.
And that woman
there's Jessica Seymour, QC.
Yeah, and the stuff she writes.
Do you know what? For a QC, she's not the sharpest pencil in the box, is she?
Do you know why? She works at Matrix Chambers. So human rights law isn't really law. It's a bit like climate scientists versus real scientists.
But I find that a very casual post 2 glasses of wine tweet whilst watching telly, I can completely take apart her arguments. So to the extent that it's not fun to argue with her because there's no intellectual challenge there at all.
Why would you?
It's sort of my hobby. Arguing on Twitter with people is kind of my hobby. I really enjoy it. And my husband said it's made me a much nicer person at home because I've got it all out of my system by the time he comes home in the evening.
Will you argue with anyone though, or do you check their follower count before you...
Oh, no, I'm an equal opportunities arguer. No.
So somebody had 5 followers?
I don't see any difference at all. No, because sometimes I can't be bothered, and every now and then I do try now to do a mass blocking every now and then, but only if they're all piling in saying the same thing. It's like, oh God, you're all being boring now. I'm going to have to start blocking you because it ruins your Twitter experience. I want it to be fun, and I like it if someone can come up with a good argument. I love it if I tweet something out and someone sends something back, completely ripping the piss out of me back. I love it. It's brilliant.
Oh
fun.
No, but that's different. Always respond to banter. Always. I mean, banter's really important.
Banter's reason to live it.
But what I'm talking about is that if somebody is saying something so off the wall that they would know the answer to if they'd read a single article.
Oh no, I don't bother with that. I'm not. I'm Google it. It's not.
Yeah.
I'm not. You still haven't told us the benefits of Brexit. Oh, mate, you're 2.5 years on.
Okay.
We've done that, mate. We've moved on from that. No, but I do like a good little argument. But one of my favourite things is when you get somebody who's really brave and they think, oh yeah, I'm the big I am. I'm going to send some abuse to Julia. You can feel them a bit. They're a bit sort of I stuck it to her. And all you do is you just retweet it, but with a comment like, here's a keeper, ladies, or it's amazing how well the Wi-Fi works in his mum's basement, and you just retweet it, and then you know perfectly well, I haven't actually asked anyone to have a go, but hey, if you think it's okay to tweet me abuse, well, I'm sorry, I'm not going to come to your defence if you get it back from my followers.
No.
You walk into it. If you're going to give it, you need to be willing to take it. And one of the loveliest things is an hour or two later, just looking up and seeing that he's deleted the tweet and made his account private. You just think, there you are.
Yes.
Lesson learned, little boy.
I like to think of my little helpers as Dumbledore's army.
Dumbledore's army.
I don't. I think they're more like the Unsullied.
Yeah.
If you watch Game of Thrones.
Do you know what? We only made it one series into Game of Thrones. Given that I am not an oversexed 14-year-old boy, an undersexed 54-year-old, is that what you are?
Yeah.
I didn't.
53, I think.
I didn't get that turned on by all the naked women. There's a lot too much gore for me. And I spent the entire time saying to my husband, "Well, how's he related to Sean Bean?" But every half hour, how's he related to Sean Bean?
What about the politics? It's all about politics.
It's very clever.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. It's all about scheming.
But why are the arms being cut off? It's horrible.
Well, we boys need something to, and we need obviously the breasts and stuff. Although I have to say, after seasons 1 and 2, the Mother of Dragons, as she's known, gets her kit off much more rarely.
Okay, so it's come. Shall I start again?
It gets quite staid after. Well, I don't know about. They don't disappear altogether. But yeah, you should.
Right,
it's good.
You think less of me now, don't you? But you see, I'm not a sad geek like you. I mean that really nicely.
I love the idea that I'm a geek. Yeah,
you
come
are
on.
Quite
yeah,
geeky.
What? The guy who couldn't master the sat nav on the way here.
That was quite terrifying.
No, I can't even.
I tell you what, my 11-year-old wouldn't have let you get away with that.
No.
She'd have taken you down for that.
No, I get the same grief from my daughter. She despises me, and that's what how daughters think of their fathers.
That's the gig.
Before we go on to the next section, I just wanted to just clear up on that chap from the South Yorkshire Police,
Dr. Billings.
Dr. Billings. These people are not just in South Yorkshire Police; they are everywhere in every institution. Do you not? Does that not worry you?
Worry, it absolutely terrifies me. But especially as I suppose I come from a background very different from yours. I come from a very sort of I suppose, quite a right-on background. Yeah, always banter and things, but very much from a sort of a left liberal background, and the idea that we had banter and you could speak openly, always, obviously, but you would certainly be careful not to offend somebody and you, with sort of very liberal views. So I find it extraordinary that someone who comes from that background, where I am, who feels that they're just speaking the truth, could be someone who could have a knock on the door from the police saying, Miss Hartley Brewer, we've been led to believe that either on my radio show or in Waitrose supermarket, you said something that someone found to be a hateful, and you just think, really? I mean, my attitude would be, have I committed a crime? Are you going to arrest me? Well,
no,
then,
a non-crime,
then
Julia.
Piss off, because you've got no business getting involved in it. As if we don't have genuine crimes. I mean, Sadiq Khan getting involved in, giving his tuppence worth on these sort of things. 100 people have been stabbed to death on London streets. It's only September, for God's sake, in just this year. And the idea that our police force has time to deal with non-crime hate incidents when they're not even getting to grips with the moped muggers, the gun runners, I mean, in particular South Yorkshire, of course. I mean, as I put to the PCC, you're talking about a police force that should spend its time dealing with phone calls, basically on the hurty feelings hotline, when you didn't deal with 1,500 girls as young as 11 who were being routinely gang raped. And by organised gangs of taxi drivers and shopkeepers, and you didn't think it was worth investigating because they were mostly Pakistani and you didn't want to be accused of Islamophobia or racism, and then you're telling me that I can't send a tweet or say something that someone doesn't like. I mean, are you kidding me? It would be laughable if it wasn't so sinister.
Yes, I agree. It was the complete lack of contrition or acknowledgement of that there was an order of difference between an 11-year-old girl being gang raped and a Hershey tweet. As far as he was concerned, there was a moral equivalence.
Well, you could be hurt by it. Well, be hurt by it. You don't have to like everything that everyone else says or does. Does it pass the legal definition of a crime? Now, you could argue, actually, the stuff that is a hate crime doesn't pass what should be the legal definition of a crime. Because I've actually read that out a few times to people on air, the Crown Prosecution Service, on their website, the actual definition of what can constitute a hate crime. This law is so insane. Someone could be walking along the street and see you and me having what we know to be a bantery, jokey exchange between friends.
Yeah.
And they could witness something and think, I didn't like that. I think either he or she, probably me, let's be honest, being hateful towards this poor man in the street. And they can report that as a hate crime. No investigation happens because there's no record of who you or I are. There's no CCTV footage of it. No one knows what actually happened. But that goes as a statistic. And I'm not making this up. That genuinely counts as a hate crime statistic, even though there's no proof that anything actually happened that was a hate crime and there's no investigation and no one's convicted of it. And that is how we're reporting crime statistics now in this country. I mean, this is Alice in Wonderland stuff.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I feel like the world of reality and logic and sort of common sense has been turned on its head, and we're now run by people who are operating according to a completely different rule system.
Yeah, and also, and that when you argue with them, like when I argued with that Police and Crime Commissioner, they don't actually engage on the subject matter. They take the view that, but if you don't agree with this, you're just a bad person. I mean, and they don't actually say, I can see your point. That yes, if we're dealing with that crime, you can't at the same time say police are under-resourced. We just simply don't have the resources to deal with all the real crimes, but we've got time to deal with non-crimes. I mean, that's madness. That's a basic lack of grasp. That's not understanding maths.
No.
In which case, to then not accept the substance of my argument because it's me saying it, rather than engage with the actual substance of the argument, which is what you're doing is madness, and that the vast majority of people in this country would think it was madness when explained to them. But when you tell them this is what's happening, they say, I think it can't really be like that. People don't believe how mad it is, but it really is.
Look, you did economics as part of your master's of the universe degree. Yeah, okay. But you know that that economics is about choices. If you spend money in one area, you cannot spend it in another. In a world of limited resources, you can't give all the money in the world to the police. Therefore, they have to make decisions on where they focus their energies. And if they're not succeeding in dealing with crimes, then
I mean, I'm all for them spending their time dealing with low-level crime, because actually the people who commit serious crime, the broken window series is so obviously correct, and you can see it just when someone drops a piece of litter in your street, how different the street is a week later. But yeah, I mean that makes sense. That's investment. But yeah, the idea that someone had hurt feelings, you've got a right to have hurt feelings in this country. You've got a right to hurt someone's feelings. This is not against the law. You can't go up and incite violence against someone. No, you can't go up to someone who's Muslim or Jewish or black or disabled or trans and say, "I hate you. I wish you were dead. I want people to hurt you." Absolutely not. You should be arrested for that. People should have a right to go about their lawful business, minding their business, without people coming up and abusing them. Or, but someone just overhearing something, or someone giving someone a dirty look. No, I'm sorry. Even if they're a nasty person, it doesn't mean they've committed a crime.
I'd slightly disagree with you.
People surely can't be allowed to go up. Someone's walking along the street who just happens to be a black woman. Someone can just come up and say, "You black."
No.
You don't think that's acceptable?
What I'd hope is that somebody would punch his lights out.
I'm all in favour of that.
But I'm not sure whether casual abuse should be.
I don't think it feels very casual if you're that person.
No. Well, now you're saying like Dr. Alan Billings.
No, but I'm not, because that's very specific. And that is against the law. You're not allowed to racially abuse people. That is the law in this country, and I've got no problem with that law.
I think there used to be a way of dealing with this. When we had policemen on the beat, which we don't have anymore, they'd sort of look out for things like this, and I think you'd be done with something like causing a fray. I mean, I think that the problem is that Tony Blair muddied the waters by creating this Orwellian distinction called hate crime, which was somehow even worse when it came to sentencing and so on than ordinary crime.
I'm very much of the view that if a man came up to me, I mean, there's a move now, certainly from Stella Creasy, the Labour MP, to make this make misogyny one of the things. So hatred of women, one of the factors in hate crime, or even non-crime hate incidents. So adding that to racism and disability and trans and all the rest. But the idea, if someone comes up and punches me in the face.
Yeah.
Now, whether they do it because I'm a woman, or they do it because I'm Julia Hartley Brewer and they hate Julia Hartley Brewer, I've got to be honest with you. I think it's more upsetting for me if it's specifically against me, as opposed to I was the wrong woman walking by at the wrong time. Yeah. And yet, under this plan, under this law, they would get a stronger sentence because it was just a woman.
We've got to do this in the next section. You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special and much missed and long-awaited guest, Julia Hartley Brewer. More in a moment.
Breitbart News Daily with Alex Marlowe.
Censorship is a key issue here, particularly for people on the right. Do you think it was addressed adequately?
Definitely not. It was useful to name check Diamond and Silk. It was useful to check even politicians who had campaign ads that were shut down. But in every case, Zuckerberg was allowed to essentially dismiss the case and move on.
Breitbart News Daily, weekdays at 6 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Patriot 125.
This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
Welcome back to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very so exciting guest, Julia, the lovely Julia Hartley Brewer. I know all the men on Twitter are getting very excited. Julia. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is a bit you, but that's the thing about being.
I do get some tweets now.
Do you know?
That's very new. For a woman of 50, it's quite encouraging.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
bless them.
Isn't it true? As we get older, it is rather frightening realizing that people just look straight through us now.
Do you know what? That is the funny thing. The number of women I know who worry about, oh God, got to get beach body ready and all of this, and got to look good. Trust me, those 18-year-old men, they don't even notice that you're there. You just look like a beach towel to them.
It's so
very depressing.
It's so horrible. But yeah, absolutely.
It's terrible because I still notice the 18-year-old men.
Yeah, yes, I know.
I'm a very happily married woman, but
yeah,
I do
yeah.
still notice a buff young man.
Well, it's
appreciate him.
That's why they
his
make
brain.
utter crap like that. the Bodyguard.
Oh yeah.
Is it called The Bodyguard?
Yeah. I only watched it for him getting his kit off, and now he's keeping his kit on. Waste of time.
Yeah, I saw I saw about episode 5. It's absolute shite, and
episode 5 was terrible.
Yeah, but okay. So I understand that he's good looking, and women of a certain age particularly drawn to that bit of toy boy stuff. But I think the BBC ought to be doing better things than targeting shite at sort of.
I have to say, I'm always a day behind on Bodyguard because I have to go to bed ridiculously early for my early breakfast show. But I've been very disappointed. It had a lot of promise, and I've been very disappointed. I think a lot of BBC dramas do this, though, don't they? They start with great promise, and they really push it, and millions of us watch. And then by the sort of third episode, obviously the writer just lost interest as well, and everyone stopped editing it properly, and it's just a lot of people looking at each other in the shadows.
There's that, but I also think that it's if you're trying to construct a thriller where which pushes the boundaries and where people are led down unexpected alleyways and so on, it's fine throwing out all the balls up in the air, but it gets quite tricky when you have to resolve them all. If you can trust nobody and yes. Everyone's it's
been a bit of a disappointment.
So
anyway,
I wanted to talk to you about feminism because I can't even talk to men about this, not because they don't want to talk about it, but because we live in a culture whereby if you're a man, your views on the subject are invalid.
And if you're a white man as well, I mean, absolutely.
I mean,
not even allowed anymore.
I'm not scared, but I just think having you along, Julia, is definitely an improvement. It's going to make the argument more credible. But I look at the world and I see that girls in the West, I'm talking about, not in the Middle East, where they have a shite time. Girls in the West have got it made. They've got this culture which is just bending over backwards. You want to be an astronaut? You want to do a STEM subject? You want to do engineering at Cambridge? Well, let me tell you, young missy, you come and read engineering because we don't want any men on the course, even though their brains, by and large, are better.
Well, yeah, don't go there. But anyway,
Anyway.
No, it is. I've only got a daughter, and I have to say I would be more worried if I had a son in terms of how their life was going to turn out. I always read about these. You get these, and you hear on the television, these MPs and these feminist campaigners who talk about how awful the world is. I mean, as far as I can tell, most women are now walking out of their front doors terrified that they're going to be sexually assaulted within moments. They're going to be basically treated like slaves by their bosses. Life is just horrific for them. They are second-class citizens in every conceivable way, and life is just awful. It's not the experience of me or indeed any woman I know, and I have friends from all walks of life. I've got friends who are earning 17 grand a year. I've got friends who are earning £1 million a year across the country, and if you told my 11-year-old daughter that girls were hard done by in life and that she didn't have the same opportunities as a boy her age, I've got to be honest, she'd look at you as if you were completely insane, because you would be. And I'm a feminist, capital F, card-carrying feminist, and proud to be so. What I'm not is a feminista, and what I'm not is a feminazi, and that is what we've got now. We've got these women who are walking around, and men, they're the worst, walking around.
They're called, don't you?
They just need
They're called manginas.
They are called manginas, and no one wants to have sex with you men, trust me, but they only do it because to get sex. Who are we kidding? Yeah. But all these men walking around, and these women walking around saying about how awful life is and how we need to assert women. And their entire argument seems to be we need to do more for women because we're victims. I'm not a bloody victim. My mum was a divorced mother of 2 children in her 20s who decided to go and be a GP. She went to medical school, and she's a good-looking woman, a single woman, and soon had another partner very soon after. But she put herself through medical school, did all the locuming and the 80-hour weeks with 2 kids, and the idea that her life wasn't harder than the average life of a woman now is insane. I was always raised to believe that I could be or do anything I wanted, and I have done. And I just find it extraordinary. Having worked in a very male-dominated career in political journalism, I was the 3rd ever female political editor of a national newspaper. I routinely sat in Downing Street briefings where the only other woman would be the secretary taking notes. And never found it intimidating or upsetting. I just always knew that, I'd just be bullshit and get on my own way. But the idea that now all these women are living in this world where they're just permanently at risk of sexual harassment and assault and being treated unequally, and life's so terrible for them, and they've all got mental health problems and they're snowflakes as a result. I think, again, we're in laughable territory. And, it's when feminists go on about we need to end period poverty because women can't afford to buy tampons. Yes. Do you know what? If the VAT on tampons is your biggest problem, you know what, ladies? You've got it pretty good.
Yes, what is the VAT
and
on
also,
a packet of tampons?
do you know what I worked it out?
20%.
Do you know at one point they were talking about the women are spending £250 a year on this? Do you know it works out as something in the region of 75 pence a year. For the average woman, having the average woman. I went through the figures that they came up, that VAT campaign, the actual figures they came up with, and it was like, I worked out that these women must be using, if they were using, say, if they're worried about money, presumably they're buying their cheapo Superdrug own brand tampons.
Yeah.
I worked out that they must be using something like one every half hour for 5 or 6 days a month. And it's like, these women probably need some sort of, they need to go to the doctor rather than worry about the VAT man. But these ridiculous figures are put out there about how awful women's lives are. And about like sexual harassment. Apparently, you can't go to university now without being raped. Yeah. Apart from the fact that the university campuses are the safest places any woman could ever be in their lives. Yeah. And we've got this kind of feminism now, which treats women as if we are these frail flowers who need to be protected. And it really scares me because we're in Handmaid's Tale territory. And this whole idea that women must be protected, they must be given their own space, people must adjust how they deal with women. Well, that's how you end up in the Handmaid's Tale with women being treated as second-class citizens, not able to read. Some women are there for breeding and some women are there to work and some women are there to be wives. And I don't understand why these women are sleepwalking into this idea that we are, after my mother's generation fought for equality, why suddenly we're pretending we're little frail flowers again.
It's like a return to the Middle Ages. It's like you are damsels.
Let's all just wear burqas and we'll be safe.
In your tower, giving your favours to your knights, and you need to be protected. And you have
wait a minute, we'll only give favours to the knights if we've already got something in triplicate about how we're willing to do that, because otherwise we'll be able to claim you raped us the next morning.
Well, exactly. And isn't one of the problems here that it completely overlooks something which to previous generations throughout history has been obvious, that women have a very particular set of skills. They have
what are they?
They have
using Google Maps?
No, using just stuff like laughing at our jokes, giggling, fetchingly when we say things. Ranging to the all-out killer, murderous rage when we've done something really wrong, like, I don't know, forget to put the cat out.
I think we can safely say
something.
women spend a lot more time thinking and planning and Machiavellian, dealing with our relationships. The average, I married a very ordinary, normal, he's wonderful, but he's a bloke. The idea that if anything that upsets me that my husband has done will not have been done with malice in his heart, it'll be forgetfulness or thoughtlessness. And I think that is the average. I genuinely think the average bloke just goes through life going, oh, sorry, I didn't realise.
That's right, we don't.
Whereas women always realise. We always realise.
That's because women notice everything.
Yeah.
Everything. Every last detail.
At 3:23 on the Saturday the 23rd of April 1987, you told me this.
Yes.
What? Did I? What?
It's like when you've been to the hairdresser and the man hasn't noticed, it's not because he doesn't love you, it's just because he doesn't see that kind of thing.
To be fair, the other week we have it sounds really posh, but it's not. Our hairdresser comes to us just because we can have all three haircuts at the same time, the same place. And it's cheaper and easier that way.
Yeah.
But he actually walked in. I'd said to him, our hairdresser Susan is going to be coming at 6:30 on Wednesday. And he walked in at 6:45. I'm in the kitchen. I've got the black sheety thing on over me. I'm standing there in front of the mirror while my hairdresser is standing there with scissors in her hand and there's hair on the floor. And I said, what do you think? And he said, what? I mean, how can you not have noticed I've had a haircut?
It's just the way
He's a boy.
It's the way we're made. It's like dirt. We don't see...
You don't see dirt or mess. No.
We don't.
No, you don't.
Whereas for a woman, it's an absolute affront. So okay. So given
I do think there are differences between men and women, but I don't necessarily think that means that affects everything else in our daily lives.
I think it does. I mean, I really do. I think this is, you said you're a feminist, and of course that you're not a feminazi.
No, but you know that a woman could be an astronaut, a woman could be a great painter, a man could be a nurse. I mean, we're not all the same. But there are averages. The average woman doesn't want to join the army. The average man doesn't want to be a nurse, and we have to accept that. I mean, that's one of my things about feminism. The whole argument about feminism now is 50-50. 50-50 on the board, 50-50 judges, 50-50 everything. You know what? They're not so bothered about 50-50 primary school teachers being men, or 50-50 people collecting our rubbish. 50-50, let's go and rescue the Thai cave boys. Oh, no one seemed to be bothered when it was entirely men who were going into this water underground to go and rescue these boys. I don't understand why people think that everything needs to be 50-50. Here are all the options available to you. Which one would you like? I'd like to study psychology and earn 10 grand a year. Well, that's your choice. I'd like to study engineering and earn 50 grand a year. Well, that's your choice. But you're not a victim of sexism.
No, exactly. And I worry that the current generation of girls are being reared in this a sense of cognitive dissonance, whereby on the one hand they live in this world where abundance is being offered them on a plate, and at the same time they're being taught by Caroline Criado Perez and whatever feminazi wants to come and visit their school and yap away about the gender pay gap, that they are victims of injustice, and they believe this stuff. Talk to my daughter. It's a real problem. I mean, maybe it's always a problem.
Get Kate Andrews round from the Institute of Economic Affairs
to
talk to her. She's been playing an absolute blinder on the gender pay gap. Well, my thing on the gender pay gap is what happens if women don't agree to go and do the jobs that they don't want to do? What happens if we make every girl study maths and physics? And they've all got first class degrees from Oxford and Cambridge in these subjects, and then they still choose to go into PR.
Yeah.
Or into a cake making business, and choose not to go and work in computing engineering or whatever. What do we do then? I mean, shall we make them go into those jobs or not? I'm so aware of this because when I had my daughter, I was political editor for a national newspaper. I'm incredibly career-minded. I'd be a nightmare stay-at-home mum. I loved being a mum. It's more than everything else in the world, and I couldn't imagine not being a mum. But just like my husband, I don't want to be a stay-at-home parent. And I was amazed by my little group of antenatal class friends, NCT class friends. We were all career women. Everyone had a good degree. Everyone was in a nicely paid job. And almost to a woman, we cut back our hours when we went back to work. The women either went back full-time and then after a year went, sod this, I'm giving up, or I'm changing careers because I don't want to do a 60-hour week. Or we cut back to a 3 or 4 day week so we could spend time with our kids. Were we forced to by our husbands? Of course we weren't. We like our kids, and yet the entire policy around women's equality and women's pay is stop working part-time, stop being with your kids, pay some random East European woman who doesn't speak English to look after your kids, we'll ship them over from Romania, and meanwhile you go out to work and you earn more money because we want to hit a target of equality. But poll after poll shows that that's not what most women want to do. And I think, given that I was raised by a feminist mother who worked full time, and I love my job, and I'm paid well, and I enjoy my work, and I get it very raw. The fact that I cut my hours down, the fact that I left being a political editor, as virtually all women who become political editors do when they have kids, because it just doesn't work. It's not because of sexism. The male political editors don't leave, but they don't see their kids.
No,
they
don't
make different choices.
They don't have a life today. I look at James Landale and people. They have no.
No, but he's got I know James Landale. I've known him for years. I know his wife. He's got a bunch of kids. His wife doesn't work. She's a highly paid solicitor. She gave up work when they had kids.
Yeah.
But that's a choice, and families make choices all the time, and they're not being pushed by this horrible patriarchy. They're choices that real men and real women make about their lives. And the idea, this whole Nick Clegg, let's have men stay at home with their kids. If my husband had said, I'd like to take half of your maternity leave, I'd have punched him in the face.
Yeah.
Not a chance, matey. My maternity leave, I want to be with our baby.
I remember the first day ever I was given sole charge of a young child.
What was Mrs.
And
Delingpole
it was,
thinking?
there obviously must have been a very, very pressing reason for it, because pretty much never again. I just think you'd have a lot more dead babies, actually, because we're not really...
My husband was a natural dad. I knew he'd be a great dad. He's absolutely brilliant, and he'd cope perfectly fine without me. But no, I'm selfish. I want to be with my child.
Yeah.
But I'm really aware that my need to be with her, he'll go off on a trip with the boys or a work trip, and he misses our daughter, and he will call up in the morning and evening, and she'll miss him. But it's not the same thing. That physical need to be near each other that I have with my child and she has with me it's biological.
I think so, yeah. And particularly,
and why would we want to change that?
Particularly as girls get older as well, in their early teen years, you really need to be there to explain the
Stuff.
Because
I'm going to be there to explain.
Because at
boys.
the beginning, I can tell you that, at least my experience, the girl, early stages is daddy's girl, but then come teenager, she suddenly needs mummy's, the female law that she needs to impart. Yeah. And in the same way.
But that's the interesting thing, of course, because so much of this whole feminista sisterhood thing is I can walk around with my tits and my bum out wearing 7-inch heels, and I can put it out, I can get smashed out of my skull, take drugs, do whatever I want, hang around in a nightclub, dance with everything hanging out. I can go home with a guy, and I still have the right at any point, no matter how drunk we both are, to say no, and then he's in the wrong if he carries on. Now, I like the idea in theory about that.
Do you?
As the mother of someone who did quite a lot of it myself.
Right.
As the mother of an 11-year-old, I've got rather different views on that.
Yeah.
And the reality is, the advice that these women, who by the way are all child-free,
Yeah.
the advice that these women will be giving to their daughters in the future will be very different, and not because of fear. It's just reality check. I'd love to walk out of my house today and not have to double lock my doors and check the window lock.
Yeah.
But I live in central London, so I do. And if I don't do that and I leave a door wide open and I get burgled, the insurance company won't pay out because I will be considered to have taken not enough responsibility for the safety of my home.
Yeah.
Likewise, you have to take responsibility for the safety of your body. And that doesn't mean never going out or letting men roam and do whatever they want.
You're victim blaming.
Victim blaming. I am victim blaming. It's about simply, there are bad people out there.
Yeah.
There will always be bad people out there.
And they're called men.
They're called men.
Men, Julia.
Now, there are plenty of women who are bad as well. And you need to adjust your behaviour accordingly to keep safe.
Yeah. I agree with that. Good. I think we've successfully put feminism to bed there, or at least for this week.
Well, no, feministas. Feminism, believing that men and women should be treated equally is not controversial anymore, surely?
No, but you see, this is the thing. Again, we get.
So you wouldn't say you're a feminist, would you?
Never.
No.
No man I would respect would. Any man who called himself a feminist, I would think.
When pushed on the definition of feminism and thinking men and women are equal and should be have equal value and should be treated equally, and have equal rights, then you're a feminist.
I'd say equal rights. Yeah, I'd say equality of opportunity. No,
maybe the vote.
No, I'd say, probably the vote. At a push, if you twisted my arm, but
depending on the issue.
But yeah, I'm. It's a bit like, look, there are so many words which have several meanings depending on the context. For example, Europe. Europe could mean merely the continent of lovely separate countries, or it could be the evil EU entity that all sensible people
Europe,
hate.
the bastion of civilization, as opposed to the bureaucratic nightmare.
And so it goes on.
Okay, so for you, the F word is now tainted.
Totally.
Beyond sensible use.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what should I call myself then, if I'm not allowed to say I'm a feminist anymore?
Well, I think you just say, look, I believe in equal rights for men and women, which is like, who wouldn't? And then, but look, it's good that you can call yourself a feminist, because I always think in the same way, it's in the old days when anti-Semitism was a bad thing, where rather than
before being normalised by a mainstream political party. Yeah.
Normalised, you could say things like, some of my best friends are Jewish, to indicate. In the same way, you can call yourself a feminist to kind of remove some of that. Is like an extra layer to your armour. I can't play that game, and I won't play it. So there we are.
Okay.
You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special and wonderful guest, Julia Hartley Brewer. More in a moment.
Breitbart News Tonight with Joel Pollack and Rebecca Mansour.
I said that it's the epitome of hypocrisy. Unless you fall in line with their liberal agenda, this uniparty, globalist, liberal agenda, they will never support you. They use the whole gender issue, of course, as some kind of tool to prop up their messaging, but it's the phoniest thing.
Sirius XM Patriot Channel 125.
This is Delingpole, a Breitbart.com podcast. Here once again is James Delingpole.
Welcome back to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my wonderful, wonderful guest, Julia Hartley Brewer. Julia, you and I mean, actually, you are slightly younger than me. You are, I think,
Thanks.
3 years younger rather than 4. As you,
I look a lot younger than
you're much more beautiful than me in every way. You're very, very special.
As my
And you're
50th birthday party invite said, she doesn't look a day over 49.
And you're much bigger and tougher than me as well.
Oh, I could take you down any day of the week. He
but-
meant that in a nice way. I'm
yeah.
I think Amazonian.
You're Amazonian. But so I think one thing we have in common, which is that we are mystified, just beyond measure, about what's happened to the once reasonably sane world we live in. And I think there is no better example of this than the craziness over transgender.
Yeah, just mind-blowing.
What is that all about?
I mean, for people who don't know what's going on, and there's actually a consultation going on that the government's giving now. Bearing in mind, this is a Conservative government. This isn't a Corbynista government introducing this. They want to bring in a law where instead of, if people who are changing their gender, so man to a woman to a man, instead of them having to go through and jump through various hoops of having, living for 2 years as the opposite sex, getting some chemical treatment, maybe the full surgical treatment, and then changing with lots of medical doctors signing off and psychologists signing off, and then changing their gender, or having their passport and their birth certificate changed, and living completely legally as the other gender. The view is that this is far too much and far too difficult psychologically for people and unnecessary, and people should be allowed to simply say, sign a document saying, I, James Delingpole, now choose to identify as Jane Delingpole, and I'm
Julia,
now a woman.
Please,
Julia, you would be a Julia. Thank you. I'd be honoured, and so and I would like to be recognised as such, and that the law should recognise somebody as you would be legally a woman purely by having signed that statement. Now that is a law. This is not made up. This is a law that a Conservative government is looking at bringing in. There's currently a public consultation on this. So the implications of this are, and we've already seen this, men convicted often of sex crimes against women and girls in a male prison, because what with being men and all, that's where they are. They then decide, I'm going to self-identify as a woman. And even though they've still got a beard, they've still got a penis, They live entirely the same, but they say, no, I self-identify as a woman. The prison authorities now have to consider whether they should be moved to a woman's prison or not. And there have been cases where these men, for that is what they are, biologically, are moved to a woman's prison, and within days there are sexual assaults. Have you actually seen someone convicted within days of arriving in a woman's prison, where, bear in mind, a lot of the women who are behind bars have actually themselves been victims of sexual abuse from their partners or father figures in their past. It's highly prevalent in women prisons that women prisoners have gone through that. They're being sexually abused. So this law would allow any man to say, oh, I'm a woman, and then be transferred to a women's jail where they are highly vulnerable. Likewise, they can walk into a women's changing room at a swimming pool. Topshop, only a few months ago, after a man who claims he's a woman, even though he's biologically as much of a man as you are, wearing a dress, arrives at a Topshop changing room, and then say, well, you can't go, you'll have to go into another changing room, you can't go into the women's changing room. Big fuss over this. Topshop, being all woke as they are, said, oh, well, no, trans women are just as welcome in our changing rooms as biological women. Well, that's fine, but I tell you who isn't going to go into that changing room forever? My 11-year-old daughter.
Yes.
I mean, this is absolutely mind-bogglingly crazy. And anyone who speaks out on this, and I've done that on the radio and I've done it online, is immediately branded a transphobe. Now, I've interviewed many people who are transgender in my time, and Kelly Malone is one of the most famous, and who's totally against this, by the way. And this is a law that's not going to help anyone who is genuinely trans. What it is going to help is sex offenders who want to get access to women-only safe spaces. And saying that anyone can call themselves a woman or anyone can call themselves a man also takes away the meaning of words. So you can say I'm a woman, I can say I'm a man. At what point then do the words man and woman have any meaning? Because we know what we mean by a man. And we know about, the particular biological genetic difference that make up a man and make a man different from a woman. I may as well say I'm a coffee table. I may as well say I've got a pink handbag here. I am a pink handbag. It's as meaningless as that to take away the meaning of these words. And this is official government policy.
Yeah. I've got a theory on this, which is that
everyone's on drugs.
That the transgender issue is so key for the cultural Marxists and the postmodernists, because, as you say, being a man and being a woman, people's sex is one of the first things that we discern when
you have a baby. What do people say? Is it a boy or a girl, and how much did it weigh? And no one really cares about the weight.
Exactly, and you see the differences fairly early on in the way that they react. I mean, girls, for example, they smile much more when they hear a male voice, and they flirt with, but also the other way around. When we're babies, one of the first things we notice is that's a woman and that's a man. So what cultural Marxism, postmodernism are doing when they question the notion of our understanding of male and female is that they've taken they're not even bothering hammering the outer defences. They've gone straight for the keep.
Yeah.
The final defence.
There is no such thing as a man or a woman, effectively.
Once you go there, all bets are off. Everything they've effectively won. That means that reality is a construct. It's nothing more.
Well, I mean, just things like, well, there's no reason why men. We see these headlines. The first man to give birth to a baby. Well, no, he's not. No, it's a woman. It's a woman who's calling herself a man. If you've got a womb and a vagina, you're a woman. I mean, you might call yourself a trans man, but fundamentally, biologically, you're still a woman, and that's not transphobic. That's just a statement of fact.
I wanted to ask you about that because I think it was only yesterday actually. And I love the Sun. I think is one of our last great newspapers, and Tony Gallagher I think is a great editor. I worry about the Mail under Geordie Greig. He may take it in a Remainer direction, but so I see the Sun as one of the last bastions of kind of old school values. But yesterday,
well, no, not even old school values, just simple common sense.
Yeah, exactly, common sense. But yesterday, I looked at the Sun's Twitter feed, and it said something like, "Well, something on those lines about calling a man has a baby."
Yeah,
that's right. But I looked at the picture, and it wasn't a man. It was sort of dykey looking woman who had her sort of breast chopped off, or something. But she was still a...
Well, no, on Sky News the other day, I saw a reporter, the news presenter actually doing an interview, was talking about the case of a man convicted as a man of sexual crimes against women, of sexual assault and rape, then going to a woman's prison and pretending to be, claiming to be a woman. I mean, that's what it's pretending. Who are we kidding? And the newsreader, she actually said, and then she sexually assaulted female prisoners. What the incident involved, the woman, trans woman, getting out her penis. Now, call me old-fashioned, James. Yes. Call me old-fashioned. If she gets out her penis, I'm thinking she's not a she.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in a lot of women's changing rooms,
and
I'm going to go with the people with penises aren't she's. I'm not that now. Is that now controversial? Am I now a transphobic, hate crime committer? I don't think I am. That's not to say I don't. Look, I absolutely accept. And I've got friends who work at the Tavistock Clinic where they deal with a lot of the transgender issues. And I'm a daughter of an NHS GP who's had trans patients, and I interviewed lots of trans people. And I absolutely understand. Bearing in mind, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people. There are people who are born who are both effectively both male and female.
Yeah.
And there are people who genuinely feel they're in the wrong body, and who am I to interview if they feel that? But that's not what's happening now. What's happening now is that it's almost like the activists are going out looking for people who are unhappy with their lives. Lots of young people now who have already been...
all young people are
young people,
unhappy with their
young
lives.
people who've been diagnosed with other serious mental health problems, depression, anxiety, other issues, that they are then being approached and persuaded, and they look at stuff online that, no, the answer to all your problems is you're born in the wrong body,
Yes.
you're actually a man or you're actually a woman.
Yes.
And they're going to these clinics, and of course they know what to say because the websites tell them what to say. And we are seeing children as young as 4 years old. This is not something I've read in a tabloid newspaper. These are the official health statistics. Children as young as 4 years old are being given hormone treatment to prevent them developing in other words, the wrong sex organs.
As young as 4?
As young as 4, they're getting chemical treatment. It is absolutely terrifying, despite the fact that even places like the Tavistock Clinic in North London, which is the leading clinic on this, that 95% of the young people who come to them with body dysphoria, transgender plans, don't actually go through with it, and actually go on to live their life perfectly happy in the gender they were born in.
And the consequences for the ones who decide, having had the operation, that actually they preferred it before, are horrific.
Or that it turns out it's not the solution to their problems.
Yes.
That there are other issues, but you're not even allowed to refer to this as body dysmorphia anymore, which is what it used to be clinically described as, because now you're making it a almost like an illness in the person as opposed to their personal choice. But the reality is, most people on this planet are born knowing they're a man or a woman, knowing they're a boy or a girl, and being never ever even questioning it. Not because we're not woke, but because we just are what we are. And most people equally are never ever worried or insecure about their sexuality. And I can completely understand and sympathise and empathise with people who do feel I'm not, I'm a girl or I'm a boy, but not being treated as such, or being gay and not feeling that you're different and everything on telly is all about straight people. I get that, but we are now moving from being empathetic and supportive into effectively trans activism to actively promote something that is not healthy and not good and not a life that anyone would wish for a loved one, in terms of the difficulty, the expense, the pain, the problems that they have for years to come, including infertility and the like. And I just think we are sleepwalking into something that is, in 10, 20 years' time, this is going to be exposed as one of the most horrific things that the NHS has ever done and the government's ever done. And there will be mass litigation. There'll be a royal commission, an inquiry into it. And we really should stop it now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let me just try and develop that point there about the Sun tweeting it out. Why is a conservative, sort of right-wing newspaper playing along with this stuff? Because that seems to me that our cultural surrender to all this stuff has been extraordinary.
Been cultural surrender, and on everything. And again, even to the whole, talk of like cultural appropriation, because Jamie Oliver wants to make jerk rice and chicken, and we are into this thing where we're using words that stop having meaning, like saying a trans woman is a woman, or saying that something is owned by a culture. We are moving into a territory where as we talked about earlier with the non-crime hate incidents, where we are policing our thought and policing our words in a way that is very sinister, and it's just a fear that being called something phobic. It's a fear of being calling an ist. Are you racist?
Yeah.
Are you sexist? Are you thisist? And we've got to a point also with our identity politics where only a trans person could go on air or go on Twitter and say, actually, this is all madness and this is wrong. Or a woman can speak up about sexism and say, actually, I think you're all getting your knickers in a twist. And only a black person can talk about racism, and only a Muslim can talk about Islamophobia. And it's almost like, you into these rules where, the Owen Jones, well, you don't know about this because you're not gay.
Yes.
And so we're all going to be in our little boxes. I was raised in a family where, this sort of liberal left-wing family, where you judge people, as I said earlier, on what they said and what they did, and you didn't judge them on the things that were intrinsic to them, like the the colour of their skin or their gender or their sexuality or anything like that, or the religion they were raised in and never really questioned from child. And it seems to me we're going backwards. And these activists think that we're moving forwards into this wonderful, perfect Narnia-like land, this perfect utopia where we're in these identity politics. But actually, it's really sinister, and it's putting everyone back in their boxes. You can talk about that because the colour of your skin. You can talk about that because you've got breasts. You can talk about that and everything else, untouchable.
But for you and me, it's very easy to say this stuff because we don't mind shooting our mouths off and being unpopular. But for a lot of people...
Yes, very scary.
A lot of people, it's very, very scary. And there's a significant body of the population which actually believe this stuff, have just bought into it wholesale, either because they're too thick... I think it's a significant population. Section of the population thinks this is all mad and they're with us. Yeah. My son came back from a party the other day. He'd been to a party with some friends studying at the Courtauld Institute. And he said that he'd been talking to a friend in which they'd been talking about With Another Eye. They both agreed it was a great movie. And one of them was quoting lines about, spades or something, I mean, a sort of a funny speech. And this got round the party, and people were sort of...
Someone was referring to black people as spades, even though they were quoting
a film, and there was a frisson of scandal. And then my son met somebody who was studying, I don't know, some geeky subject like maths at UCL or somewhere.
Someone who's going to get a proper job.
And he said to him, "So where on the spectrum are you?" And just kind of male
funny banter. Yeah.
And one of the hostesses. And this is the thing. It was a woman, and I think women have this problem more than men in the youth culture.
Taking offence.
They seem to have that weaponized grievance taking is part of their new armory.
But also a total lack of sense of humour. I know you've talked about this in podcasts before. This inability to recognise the motive behind what someone is saying.
Yes. Well, you see, I know you'll disagree with me violently on this one, but I do think men generally do the banter better than
I won't
girls.
disagree with you on that. It's one of the reasons actually I like working in a very male-dominated industry. All of my closest friends are women, but I never trust a woman whose closest friends aren't women, by the way. Top tip in life. But when the women say, "Well, other women don't like me," yeah, maybe there's a reason why they don't like you, sweetheart. But the reality is that men are much better at banter. I love the fact that you can all just sort of take the mick out of each other, and all of my team take the mick out of me, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Frankly,
rude.
If no one's called you the C word by the end of the week, then you're not in the gang.
Yeah, exactly. That being rude to another man is often a sign of that you like him.
Yes, and often the reaction back will be, "Oh, good one, yeah, well done, good one." As opposed to, "I'm going to go and cry and talk to my friends, and we're all going to bitch about you, and then we'll have a massive investigation into who said what when."
Which is so horrible. I mean,
and it's what women do.
It's one reason I'm really glad I'm not a girl. Actually, that whole bitchery network. It must be so. Imagine being at an all-girls school.
Oh God. I went to an all-girls comp, but we were relatively sane, I think.
Right, but I suppose what I'm saying is that this policing of our language, the policing of kind of what people say on Twitter, is I think partly driven by humorless women who don't understand the difference between intended. They don't get the joke.
I'm completely with you, and I'd love to disagree with you, but I think often they don't get the joke.
Yeah.
And the need to take offence. But again, if you bring girls up in particular, and a lot of young men as well now, and you tell them that they are victims and everyone's against you, well, of course they're going to think that they're permanent victims and that there's offence to be taken. What I love also is the taking offence on others' behalf and knowing when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate. I've been with people at events where someone has referred to a tax driver, the N word driving a cab, or referring to the P word, the corner shop. And I've picked it up both times. They've said, "Oh, you're a PC." I went, "I'm not remotely politically correct. You're using those terms in an offensive, racist way. It's totally irrelevant that the driver was black. It's totally irrelevant that the shop was owned by someone who's Pakistani. It probably wasn't. He was probably Indian, but you don't know the difference. What you mean is the corner shop. But just say the word corner instead of the P word shop." I'm not prepared to use those words myself, not because I'm politically correct, act because they're laden with venom. And it seems to me being able to tell the difference between someone making a light-hearted joke, often joking about someone else having that attitude, as opposed to someone who actually is speaking with malice in their heart about somebody. I think it's bizarre that people can't do that. And I think part of that is people live online now. They don't have conversations around the table with their family. When you see teenagers now, they're often sitting there looking at their phones. They're not interacting with other human beings, having conversation, chit chat, where they're exchanging information, looking in each other's faces, seeing what's in their eyes, seeing the expression, and learning to read when someone's being sarcastic, the tone, when someone's being snide, when someone's being venomous, we are losing a really fundamental part of human communication.
I think, look, there's got to be a backlash, and I think we are going to lead that backlash.
I'm quite happy. I'll get my pitchfork, and I am. This is a hill I am willing to die on.
Yeah, I think it is.
Absolutely,
do you know, Julia? I think it is the hill. Actually, if we can't banter anymore, then what is the bloody point?
It's the right to laugh at religion. It's whichever religion. It's the right to have a Muhammad cartoon on your T-shirt and not be beheaded. I mean, that's the territory we're in.
Yeah,
and I really, really think that it is a hill worth dying on, because I think we are sleepwalking into some really dangerous territory. And this whole, but we want everyone to be nice to everyone all the time. Well, you know what you do? You don't actually make people nice. You don't make people kinder. You just make people shut up. And when people have to shut up, that's what's happened actually over things like Brexit. If you tell people that they're just racist, xenophobic, ignorant pigs for thinking something, and you don't let them express that view, and politicians don't listen to that view and take it seriously and then adjust their policies accordingly on issues that matter to a vast majority of people in this country, then you get things like the Brexit vote. You get the backlash. And there will be so many backlashes to come for the politicians who, people let this stuff go. They're not aware of it. They're living their daily lives. But eventually this stuff will start affecting ordinary people, not just the Westminster bubble media class who witter on about this nonsense all the time. But when it starts being real and people start losing their jobs for saying the wrong word when there's been no malice, of
saying whiter than white, like that
police officer being disciplined for saying whiter than white. I mean,
that was extraordinary. I just think,
but it's not extraordinary anymore, because that story was in the Evening Standard and then disappeared again. We all just accept that the world is that mad. I mean, whoever reported that should be hung at dawn. I mean, these people are terrifying. We are going to see a backlash. We are going to see people saying enough is enough. But I worry that before we get there, we're going to see some nastiness, and it will have been created by this snowflakey PC generation telling people you can't say that. You know what? I can, and I just did, and I will again, and there's nothing you can do about it. As I say, it's a hill I'm willing to die on.
You're listening to the Delingpole podcast with me, James Delingpole, and my very special guest, Julia Hartley Brewer. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson.
I want to actually take a couple of the references to Donald Trump from hip-hop. And then we're going to try to see if we can figure out why they like Donald Trump. Jay-Z said, I'm at the Trump International. Ask for me. Raekwon said, I'm the black Trump. They are comparing themselves to what he represents. His wealth, his achievement. Capitalism.
Sonny's Corner with Sonny Johnson. Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. East on Sirius XM Patriot 125.